Every gardener wants rich, crumbly soil full of earthworms, because worms are the true engineers of fertile ground. They aerate the soil, break down organic matter, and leave behind castings more nutrient-dense than most fertilizers money can buy. The problem is, worms won't stay in poor, lifeless soil. They need food, cover, and the right habitat. The fastest way to create those conditions isn't with expensive inputs, it's by planting the right crops that feed worms directly. In this guide, you'll learn about 3 plants that trigger a worm explosion in your soil, how they work, and how to integrate them step by step so your garden transforms quickly. Why plants can be more powerful than compost for attracting worms. It's easy to think worms only come for kitchen scraps or manure, but what they want most is a steady supply of soft, moist, organic matter. Compost piles are excellent, but once you spread the finished product, it breaks down quickly and the food source is gone. Plants, on the other hand, create a constant stream of root exudates, fallen leaves, and decaying stems right in the soil where worms live. The fine roots of certain species leak sugars and proteins into the soil as they grow, and when they die back, they leave tiny tunnels that worms use as pathways. That means the right plants create both food and structure, ensuring worms multiply and stay in place. The first plant to grow is clover because it feeds worms while fixing nitrogen. Clover is one of the best worm-attracting plants you can establish. Its soft leaves decompose quickly, making perfect worm food. More importantly, clover fixes nitrogen through root nodules, enriching the soil while supporting microbial life. Worms thrive where microbes are abundant because they help break down residues into digestible material. To use clover effectively, sow a dense cover crop in empty beds or scatter seeds between rows of vegetables. A simple ratio is about 1 pound of clover seed per 1,000 square feet of garden space. Once it establishes, let it grow until it flowers, then cut it back and leave the residue on the soil as mulch. Worms will move up to the surface within days to feed on this material. If you want year-round benefits, mix clover into perennial areas, such as around fruit trees or berry patches. There, it continually drops foliage and maintains a worm-friendly environment for years without much effort. The second plant to grow is comfrey, because its deep roots bring nutrients up for worms to process. Comfrey is often called a dynamic accumulator because its roots mine minerals from deep in the subsoil that most plants cannot reach. When its large leaves fall and decay, those minerals are returned to the topsoil in a form worms can break down and recycle. Comfrey also produces biomass, faster than almost any garden plant, meaning you have a constant supply of green mulch to feed worms. The most effective way to use comfrey for worms is by planting clumps around the edges of garden beds or compost bins. Space plants about 2 to 3 feet apart, as each one spreads widely. Once the leaves grow large, cut them back several times a season and lay them directly on the soil surface. Within a week, you'll see worms congregating beneath the decomposing leaves. Unlike dry straw or wood chips, comfrey breaks down into a soft, moist material that worms devour quickly. Over time, this repeated cycle of cutting and mulching creates a worm-rich zone that transforms compacted soil into loose, fertile ground. The third plant to grow is alfalfa, because it builds root tunnels worms use and leaves behind nutrient-rich residue. Alfalfa is another powerful worm-building plant. It has a deep root system that not only aerates the soil, but also leaves behind decaying roots when cut or grazed, which worms consume directly. Like clover, alfalfa fixes nitrogen, which boosts soil fertility and microbial populations. But its real advantage is the sheer volume of organic matter it contributes underground, creating pathways for worms and holding moisture where they thrive. For home gardens, sow alfalfa in patches or as a rotation crop in beds you're resting for a season. Use about half a pound of seed per 500 square feet, raking it lightly into the soil and keeping it moist until germination. Allow it to grow for a couple of months, then cut it down and let the residue decompose in place. Repeat this cut and drop cycle several times a year, and your soil will gradually become filled with worm channels and organic matter. Within one season, you'll notice worm populations multiplying in areas where alfalfa was planted. How to integrate these plants into your garden for maximum worm activity? To get the fastest results, combine these 3 plants strategically. Clover covers the soil surface and provides quick-feeding organic matter. Comfrey supplies mineral-rich mulch that worms consume rapidly. Alfalfa builds deep organic matter and root tunnels that worms expand into. Together, they create a continuous food web above and below ground. For a practical setup, you'll want to start with clover as an underplanting around your vegetable rows. Then plant comfrey along the borders and sow alfalfa in your rotation beds. Every few weeks, cut clover and comfrey to use as mulch and allow your alfalfa to, cycle through growth and regrowth. It's important to keep the soil moist during dry spells, since worms just won't thrive in dry, hard ground. By maintaining this system, your soil biology will shift within a single season, and by the next year you'll notice the unmistakable signs of worm castings everywhere. Worms are truly the foundation of fertile soil, but they simply won't appear in lifeless ground. By planting clover, comfrey, and alfalfa, you're creating a steady buffet of soft, nutrient-rich material that keeps worm populations multiplying. With every season, these plants add more organic matter, more root channels, and, more microbial activity, all of which worms use to thrive. The result is soil that transforms quickly into a living, fertile system capable of sustaining heavy harvests year after year. If this guide has shown you a clear path to building worm-rich soil, do share it with other growers who might benefit and, subscribe to Soil Doctor for more practical, time-tested methods to keep your soil alive and productive.